So let's get back. We've got everybody back here. So Aaron, I'm not sure you're going to get a word in edgewise here, so I'm going to come back to you because you've heard a lot of the conversations going on here. What are you thinking from what you've heard?
Not dissimilar to the conversations we've been having for years. So it's gratifying to hear the excitement, the potential, the love of history that everybody really has remarked on. The one thing I want to make sure we don't leave with is the fact that this history is really just a base and a background upon which we really look forward. Where are we going to go in the next 250 years?
Okay, that's your question to everybody else. Where do we go in the next 250?
We were just talking about this.
We were, and really, as history has informed our present, we're really looking forward to what we do in the next 50 years, so that our 300th anniversary will be one of making St. Louis even better, right?
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea that you guys had for the time capsules or for the event to write in 50 years so that they would, reveal. And I think about even with my son, and I'm like, God, when I saw that as the event, I thought, I don't know if I'll be alive then, but I thought, if he's here, will the city look different? Will things be different? Will we still be talking about desegregation and like this and that for the schools and education? Will we be past that, in 50 years? That's really the first thing that came to my mind because I was like, oh, that's a great activity. I might not be alive, but my son probably will, or I hope he will. So it's like...
Historians, do we ever get past that stuff?
I think we can.
Yeah?
I do. And I don't think I'm just being hopeful. I think it is the kind of thing that, if we keep working towards it, that's what I'd like to see in 50 years, that we can be looking back on that as something that is history that doesn't necessarily inform our present so much anymore. Yeah.
Well, yes, true. We're changing, if we think about where it was when I grew up, completely apartheid town. And I look at it today. If we look at what's happening all around the world, countries, and if you think about Du Bois's statement, over time, everything changes for the better. Time can be long, but it will change. It's not if it's going to change, it's when it's going to change. And I think looking at the past, when it's moving, it's escalating. And I don't think we're going back. I think the way it's moving now, we will be moving forward.
But do we still have apartheid schools, though? I mean, do we have schools that today, are schools diverse, so that it's still black and white and
in some cases, it all depends on where we live. And we have relatives who steer people. We have to realize that people make money off of racism. And when you take the profit out of racism, it'll work out. But as long as there's money in racism, you're going to have that whole method of disbursement. And we have to work on that. You have to shine a light on it. When you find relatives who are not doing right, you point them out just like cockroaches. They run when you put the light on, right?
It's true.
Okay.
And our calendar, if somebody was going to go to our website and look at the events that have been registered, we've got some great conversations that are scheduled around race, around education reform, that groups have wanted to come together and have a really solid conversation and help move this forward as part of the 250th anniversary events.
That's the thing when we were talking about that. You can have a party and other parties and big stuff, but it's these conversations within the community. Denise, you know that, right?
Yes.
Real people talking to real people.
That's right.
Either disagreeing, agreeing to disagree, finding common ground. It takes place face to face, doesn't it?
That's right, it certainly does. And we're really excited about the youth who are involved in this celebration. They're living in a global world, a global environment, and they're much more accustomed to working across difference. They have relationships across difference, and I think we have great hope for St. Louis and for our country, really, in bringing young people together to lead us, really, in continuing to make St. Louis a better and better place.
You know what I'll say is there's no city that's ever going to be perfect and have it be problem-free. That's just a futile thing to strive for. What we can do is hope that we heal a lot of wounds that have been opened over the last 250 years here, and use this year, this birthday milestone, as an opportunity for self-reflection. What has this city done right? Where have we come from? Where are we now? Where can we go? And I think we just have a really remarkable urban city here with so many different characters and personalities and so much potential, just bursting with potential everywhere.
I think failures are important. You know, you bring up this thing, and we talked about this last week, that I think there's been a lot of successes, but people don't really talk about successes. They talk about failures. Do we do that too much?
Successes.
Yeah.
I lived in University City for 43 years. When first moved there were great efforts on the realtors to frighten all the whites out. They fought back, and now it's one of the most diverse communities, and the real estate value, instead of going down, has gone up. Many of the kids who grew up can't afford to come back because of the real estate prices, because people decided they wanted to have that type of community, a diverse community. I had some Thai visitors who came and stayed with us. They went down the street, they came back to home with some Thai neighbors. And so it's
so true.
It's what people want.
I think you're right. I mean, there was a time when Temple Israel couldn't get property on Ladue Road or Clayton Road. When I first moved here 25 years ago, we didn't have a black mayor yet, a black county executive, hadn't had a black police chief or a black fire chief. And since the last 25 years, we've had all 4 of those. No one really knows where the future's going. I mean, if I asked you 10 years ago, do you think Anheuser-Busch will be owned by the Belgians? You'd say you're nuts. And would you say that, hey, in 2006, a kid from South St. Louis is going to invent Twitter, which will revolutionize the way people communicate? I mean, you just can't predict these things. No one really knows where we're going to be in 10 years, let alone 50.
Well, technically, he didn't invent Twitter. If you look at the history,
Well,
that story is not.
We're splitting hairs.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going with Jack Dorsey because he went with Bishop DeBerg.
We're going to continue this conversation online, 9net.org, but I want to continue with this idea that we've got people here who are invested in this community, who are interested in this community. This argument thing, I'll go back to Aaron, and early on, didn't you say, oh my goodness, how are we going to deal with this? Too many people, too many points of view. How are we going to get through with this?
So you make it as democratic as you can, and you set a table that has room for absolutely everyone. Hard problems don't solve themselves unless you focus on them. So yeah, if we focus on failure, then we're going to get better at it. We're going to get closer to the solutions. And you can't have those conversations without that broad and diverse participation.
As we've all mentioned, there's so many stories, there is absolutely no way you can tell them all. What we tried to do is come up with a way to talk about the most diverse snapshot of St. Louis history we could possibly think of. So we have 50 people, 50 places, 50 moments, 50 images, and 50 objects, all in one gallery. Each one's about 200 words, so it's just small enough you can digest it, but it's large enough that it can satisfy you and you can really get an idea of what's happening. And for the place, we wanted to talk about things that were both obvious and hidden. We wanted to talk about things in St. Louis history that were serious and fun. And we wanted to talk about things that St. Louis is not only proud of, but also things that we are and rightfully should be ashamed of. And really, nothing was left off the table.
I always ask this question when I talk to groups about history, and I say, we look back at these stupid decisions people made 50 or 100 years ago. What stupid decisions are we making today that they're going to be looking at and saying, what were they thinking?
A lot. Can we state honestly?
Whatever you'd like. Sure.
Ballpark Village is a very stupid decision. I think it was very poorly executed. And just,
But baseball stadiums only last 45 years, so
correct,
in 45 years we'll have a new one.
We continue to repeat a lot of the same mistakes that we've made that we should have learned from by now. A missed opportunity is not removing the highway with the new Arch Grounds redevelopment. Progressive cities around the country have done away with their highways left and right, and why can't St. Louis? We just don't get it sometimes. And just the notion that you build a stadium or a convention center or an airport or all these big ticket projects, the Paul McKee Northside thing, that these silver bullet projects are just going to somehow infuse life into places that have lost it over the years. It's just not the way cities redevelop.
Yeah, but I always wondered too. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to piggyback on one thing that you said, just in terms of public transit, I think the mistake that we're making is not investing the right way in transit across the region. We made a mistake, a little over 100 years ago, stripping out all the streetcar rail from the city. We used to have a really extensive and really well-functioning streetcar system. We had a great public transit system, system that we decided to do away with so that we could invest more heavily in the automobile. And that was great for boom times for a while, but like that doesn't really seem to be a sustainable model anymore. But we're not really turning around and reinvesting in public transit or trying to find something new to invest in. We're going to stick with the automobile. We're going to stick with that. And I think that's a mistake that's going to keep haunting us for a long time.
I think that really has to do with our polarization, you know, in the city, and that is an issue that we certainly have to look at. But I think in terms of this celebration, the 250th birthday of St. Louis, every individual who lives in St. Louis has the opportunity to have a voice, to create an opportunity to showcase themselves, their community, their initiatives, their schools, and I think we all have a part to play in that. And if we don't do it, then we certainly can't complain about the end of the year not having arrived at a different place. And so I think for each of us, we need to take up our own responsibility and our own authority to do that.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting that you brought up Ballpark Village, because for the past 6 weeks, every day, every Thursday, I happen to be downtown and drive by, and there's protesters. They're African-American contractors who are standing outside Ballpark Village. And this isn't the time to get into that, but, you know, the idea is that they're not being contracted in the construction of that. And it made me think about, speaking of 50 years in a show we did here, when Percy Green protested about the St. Louis Arch and the construction on federal land, which is different than private, but because black contractors weren't being used. So you have this idea that there's something profound about what's going on, but then these other things just aren't changing, you know? And so there's just this back and forth of this contrast where it's amazing. I think it's great. I was just saying to someone today, I can't wait to see what they do downtown. Flip side, yeah, I'd like to see those people also get employed. And is this really going to be the same thing 50 years? Are we going to continue to see this? So it's interesting that you brought that up, because I just was talking about that this morning with someone who works downtown, because I see them every when I'm there every week.
So 250th birthday, more reenactors and more discussion and arguments and observations. I think that's the key. I've always said, if people, and if they listen to Charlie, or they watch something on Channel 9, or they listen to a lecture or a symposium, if they then walk outside and look at their community a little differently, then I think that's a really good thing. Or if they come out of your class, that's what it is. So thanks everybody for joining us. This has been really, really fun. Thanks again.
Pleasure.
Thank you.